All right. Thanks for coming on the show, Adam. This week I have Adam Kurzawa from Infinum. He's the head of biz dev there. And yeah, just thank you for coming on the show and letting me talk biz dev with you.
Sure thing. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure thing.
It's a topic I can actually speak about intelligently, so I'll take the
Awesome.
opportunity.
Well, I mean, when we were getting to know each other kind of behind the scenes, one of the things that came up is that you kind of take a really smart outbound approach to things. I know a lot of agency founders might have an aversion to outbound as it's typically thought of. What do you think a lot of agency founders or owners get wrong when it comes to outbound?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first and foremost, what they get wrong about it is they just don't do it, and they don't do it because there's a reliance on inbound. And I get it, right? A lot of agencies, we all hear about spending time on narrowly positioning your agency to really focus specifically on your niche community of who you're selling to, doing a bunch of marketing, and that's expensive, right? That's effort there. And if those things are hitting and leads are coming in, everything's great. Uh, what I noticed keenly during the pandemic is I actually had agencies reach out to me during the pandemic and say, "Hey, like we're in trouble. You know, the inbound stuff's not happening. Obviously, we're all feeling this, and we've not done that outbound work. We haven't flexed that muscle. Can you help coach the team or talk them through it?" And I did that with a couple agencies, and I think at one point in another community, I got asked to do a talk about it, just because there was so much interest in doing outbound. Because it's funny. It's I often hear from people that they're either afraid or they don't know where to start. And I
Hmm.
think the issue is, when you're doing marketing or you're doing ad sales, we live in this era of immediacy when it comes to metrics and ROI and feedback. And outbound is absolutely unequivocally a long game. You can spend 2 years, 3 years, 5 years working on leads and building your relationships before those things hit. And I think because of that lack of immediacy, agency owners are sometimes like, where do I put my eggs in the basket?
Hmm.
And oftentimes I think outbound gets overlooked for that reason.
Well, I think that's funny you mentioned that outbound gets overlooked for that reason because I think, at least in the circles that I've run in, people assume that outbound, going out and sending 1,000 emails, at least maybe I'll get one person to say yes.
Yep.
That is the the low hanging fruit, the fast option when it comes
Yeah.
to selling your services. Do you feel like maybe you can kind of set the record straight based off of your experience?
Yeah. I tell people all the time when I hear thousands of emails and cold outreach, all that, I'm like, that is not outbound. That's like, let's throw stuff at the wall. I think there's, with one exception, and I say this to people all the time, if you work at a SaaS platform or a SaaS product provider, and your product solves a solution for a very specific business type or a specific role, and you can find a list of all those people, and you're hammering those emails and making those calls, it is a numbers game. And like, that's the game. But I think for the vast majority of us in digital agency world, client services, if you will, we sell different things to different buyers, different technologies, different audiences all the time. So you're constantly having to tailor, who you're talking to and what their needs are. And I think your outreach has to be reflected that way. When I think about tactics, people are always like, well, where do you start? And to me, the easiest place to start is take inventory on people that have spent money with your agency, with you as an individual, or they've hired companies where people on your team have worked before. And the reason I always suggest that is they've spent money with you, they've trusted you with like hard-earned dollars in revenue to work on their project, they've trusted you with their IP and their brand and their customers. They've got to learn how your team works. They've hopefully seen some quality product in return, and they got to know your personality. So you're removing a lot of the uncertainty that is often a barrier to buying. So I often tell people to start there and then work your way back into other places like getting referrals from people that you know or from other clients. But going back to the well, and oftentimes you can even look at situations where you've pitched, and this is one that's actually paid off in the last couple of years. It's not as consistent, but if you keep at it, it can happen. Where we've come in second on a project, maybe it was an RFP project, and we didn't get selected, but we were darn close. Like we were absolutely the runner up, and you lose on something very specific. You've got that schedule that you put in your proposal on when the client expected things to happen.
Hmm.
Follow up on that. Follow up with them on, by adding, things that add value to what they're looking to do with the project. Keep in communication. And what we've seen come out of that are what I call boomerang projects, where you lose it, you throw it, it goes away and it comes back. Um, and we've had a couple of those rescue projects, and they've turned into long-term clients.
That's great. Well, I mean, I know that you talk a lot about, the importance of authentic long-term relationships.
Mhm.
Can you kind of, I guess, get into more of the tactics around that? I think,
Yeah.
probably agency founders are wondering, okay, I've heard that from other people, but what do you mean by that? And can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, when I think about biz dev as a whole, I think where you're manufacturing opportunities. So in order to do that, I think you've also got to, in a way, manufacture relationships and new relationships with people that you don't know. And I think about it no different than I think about how you generate friendships. Active listening to people, being curious about their interests. I often tell people that I think sales really comes down to a lot of good karma, um, and not just doing things for other people because you think you're going to get something out of it, because it's really the right thing to do, and it kind of needs to become part of your DNA in some respect. So my motto with that is instead of ABC always be closing, it's ABU always be useful.
Mm,
Um, so when nurturing those relationships, I think if you the sooner you can get those outside of the digital realm and into kind of physical, especially post pandemic. There's so much of a desire for really meaningful in person connection. So like Zoom is great, right? We're talking over LinkedIn. This will be on YouTube. People will see our heads. That's somewhat personal.
mhm.
It's better than an email. It's maybe better than just a straight phone call, but nothing would replace if you or I were sitting at a cafe right now talking face to face. You pick up on body cues. Things happen in your periphery, and you get a gauge on someone's reaction to things. Even a step further, when you actually have the opportunity to go to a client's office, for example, to me that's gold dust, because
Mhm.
there's always an opportunity that something will happen in the time that you're there that has them think of an opportunity they weren't thinking about your company for, or someone else walks up and that introduction winds up being the person you always needed to meet. um, so I view building those relationships the same way I build friendships and meaningful relationships with other people. Active listening, really genuinely caring about the person's interests, and trying to find ways that I can add value, whether it's personally or professionally.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned personally and professionally. I've had some other conversations with people where they would, number one, they talk about like conferences can be a great way to be meeting a lot of your target audience,
Sure.
in a physical sort of way. But um, I've also heard, talk to other people who, where they say, you know, it's not about, you know, just meeting them in person. It's also about, um, like getting to know them as a person, not just, um, you know, learn the details of their business or something like that. Like, I've heard of more people who they end up, showing pictures of their kids and talking about, life in general. And then it just happens to come up at the end of the conversation, like what they do. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, uh,
Yeah.
our company might actually need what you do.
Yeah.
Here's my card. We should
Yeah.
chat sometime. And it's like the
Yeah.
conversation that was not the point of the conversation, but it kind of, it was a very organic outgrowth of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I've had the opposite happen, which is a funny one that I always remember. I was with our creative director and a couple other colleagues at South by Southwest. God, probably over a decade ago at this point. But and we were at this bar, Easy Tiger, that's got like outdoor picnic table set up, and we're sitting there having drinks, and naturally at South by you're just making conversation, with everyone. And we met these three guys, and we're talking to them, and one guy's at a cool startup that we were like, wow, it'd be great to work with them, and another company, and so on and so forth. And we spent probably 2 hours with these guys, like laughing. The one guy had a Greek cousin that had a restaurant like a block from our office in Manhattan at the time. All this good stuff. And literally, we're getting toward the end, and some people are getting up, and the one guy says to me, like, so what do you do? And I was like, oh, I'm in business development. He was like, oh, you're a sales guy? Like, it was amazing how quickly he was like completely uninterested in continuing the conversation. And I'm laughing in my head because I'm like, right, I wasn't selling you. I was having a genuine 2 hour great conversation. So, I mean, leading with I'm a salesperson or biz dev person, probably not the best thing. But like everything you said is accurate. It's having a meaningful connection, being authentic, sincere. Um, and then if those things come up, great. I mean, I've got both dear friends that I've never talked about doing work together with that have wound up just becoming clients many years later. And then people where we were in pitching conversations or places where we've done work and then we stopped working with the organization after a number of years that are now some of my best friends. So it's all relationships. It's the name of the game.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I know this is top of mind for a lot of founders, but you talked a lot about building these long-term relationships that are organic, ideally in person in many cases. How do you think about balancing kind of long-term relationship needs of this outbound approach with the need to hit short-term revenue goals that
Yeah, it's a
a
great
lot of
question.
agencies are dealing with?
Yeah, and especially now, I mean, among the various calls that I run with some folks, I mean, there's definitely a sentiment that it's been a weird, slow summer, which summer is always kind of strange when you're in a sales role. But every 4 years we have presidential elections in the U.S., and that tends to extend the weirdness into October or November. So people are kind of freaked out about that quiet period. And to me, it's always you're doing what's right for the business at the time, always first and foremost. So if you've got an opportunity in front of you that has some revenue attached, whether you need to write a proposal, do a pitch meeting, have a follow-up conversation with a client, you're always focusing on that first. In my experience, designers, engineers, folks like that really loathe what they call context switching, like jumping between different things. I think in sales, like you just have to be great at it. It's just so much the nature of like, okay, I have to focus intently on this thing. Shake your head violently, have a cup of coffee, and then jump over to the next thing. And the speed of that and the amount of times you need to ebb and flow, it changes, right? But you just have to adapt to what's most important. The thing that I think is crucial is at the moment that short term opportunity has been dealt with, efficiently, you got to snap back and get right back to the outbound stuff, or looking for referrals, or doing research on new clients or new events to attend, or whatever the tactics are that you're going to use in your mix of skills to attract talent, or not attract talent but attract opportunity. You got to get
Hmm.
right back to it. You got to get back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Well, I guess one question. I mean, can you talk maybe more concretely about some of the things that have worked best for you um, at Infinum and kind of your biz dev work that you're doing now?
Sure. One of the things I try to always do is, the example that I'll use is really, um, let's say there's a business we want to work with, or a particular vertical, and we're doing some real in-depth research into who we want to target and how we want to get in front of those people. To me, the name of the game is how quickly can you get a prospect or a lead at that organization from ice cold to piping hot before you make that first outreach. And I think there's a lot of things that you can do. Obviously, LinkedIn is a place where people do a ton of prospecting and do a lot of their research, following them with Sales Navigator or tracking them some other way. And really learning about the content that they're putting out there, and trying to learn about some of the pain points they have as a business. I had someone recommend to me, one of the things they started doing is deep dives on Reddit
Hmm.
inside certain verticals. And I have not done this, but the way that it was told to me is you've got people really candidly talking about their day job, and they're giving some little inside sauce, secret sauce of the RFP may say one thing, but like this is the problem that the team sees, and can you start to find out that those nuggets of knowledge, and interact with those people there.
Hmm.
Once you've done the research, then to me you've got to find a way, whoever the main contact is, depending on title and where they sit in the org and where there might be opportunities, trying to find people that you're somehow second connected to that person through, and getting some sort of a warm introduction. um, when that situation arises, what I try to do is take the work off of the friend that I'm going to ask for the referral, and I write the intro note, and I make it explicitly, clear. This is why I'd like to speak to such and such person about their organization and where I think we could add some value. Have your friend send that, and then take the recommendation from there. But those are like, to me, that's the closest that I personally get to what I would call cold,
Hmm.
where I don't previously have a connection to someone at a company, or in that role at that company.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something there that I think is really important, is like kind of leveraging some of your existing network to get some of these introductions, which I think, I mean, that in and of itself can really warm up a lead because, the power of word of mouth.
Yeah.
Um, is that a big, I guess, a big part of your approach is just kind of always trying to kind of um, lean into your existing network connections to be able to kind of warm things up just by virtue of that fact?
Yeah, I mean, and you've got to be careful, right? You can overwork your network, and the last thing you want to be seen by any of your friends or connections professionally is like someone who's like always asking. Like when I worked in music, you'd always have that person that like the day of an event would ask you to be on the guest list, like without fail, but you'd never hear from them about anything else.
Yeah.
It's the same in business, right? So like I definitely go by the give and take. Like if I'm going to ask something, I'm going to try to make sure I can return something back to that person and help them out in some way. So I'm not doing that often. I'm saving that for opportunities, or clients where I really think it's going to make a meaningful difference. But yeah, that's just one of the ways that I try to get in front of people that I'm not already connected to.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Well, yeah, I guess the next question I have is around kind of the how this, outbound approach that you swear by, um, how it might look different if you're in a smaller agency, maybe like 1 million, uh, you know, up to, a larger agency like 10 million. Like what,
Yeah.
how do you think about, I don't know, how would you approach it differently as you move up that?
Yeah, my expectation, if you're 1 million, or just a lower revenue, not that 1 million is not a significant amount of revenue, but when you talk about 10 million versus one, it is. Um, when you're at that point, I would expect you probably have a smaller sales team, if you even have anyone who is devoted to sales at that point. It might be a situation where you've really got a lot of founder led sales at that point. I
Mhm.
think founders have a unique advantage in an outbound landscape, right? Like I'll say it, till I'm blue in the face. People will take a phone call or a meeting with a founder or a CEO before a head of business development every day of the week. It just naturally sounds like it's a mutual exchange of senior level conversation, versus if your head of sales or head of biz devs coming in the room, they expect that there's going to be some kind of an ask made, or they're looking for a project or some sort of a working engagement.
Mhm.
When you're smaller, I think you've just got to be more tactical and more specific with how you're going to use your time, right, and planning these things out. I would expect that you're doing some marketing. There is some inbound. You're naturally asking for referrals wherever you can from existing clients or other people in your network. And then the outbound stuff, to me, you just got to pepper it in whenever you've got downtime. And yes, salespeople do have downtime. Um, like right now, August, September, salespeople have downtime. Like now's the time that you're talking to people pre-holiday to get them out for coffee, to say you're coming to their town and bookending meetings around meetings, to make sure you're taking full advantage of your trip, or trying to see what they've got planned for Q1 and can we get ahead of some planning discussions now in Q4. As that scales up, I think it gets really interesting because when I think of someone going from 1 million to 10 million, I think you're going to have a lot more projects and clients, which means there's more room to land and expand inside of those new clients, right? So are you meaningfully asking people inside of those new clients, are there other departments that we could be adding value to and doing projects with? Would you be willing to make an introduction to XYZ person in this other department? Also asking them for referrals outside of the organization. On the flip side, to get to 10 million in revenue, you're probably losing 15 to 20 million in projects that you're pitching on. So every one of those losses, how can you maximize those losses? I often say you've got to have a thick skin and short memory. And the thick skin is you're going to get kicked in the teeth 8 million times in your career. So you just got to get used to it. But the short memory is how can you quickly gain as much knowledge from that loss or you guys not winning a project and apply that to the next thing. So for all of these that lose, both taking the knowledge gained of, oh, we didn't win it because of these three reasons. Is that something we can improve in the pitch process? Is it something that needs to be in our proposal? Is it a service that we don't offer that we should think about adding into the mix on the next one? And then also just following up with those people and keeping them in your network. To me, a lost opportunity is a great opportunity to make a next new client. Um, you've demonstrated you'll put in the work for the pitch. You made it to number two. Um, if you're in a field of 1 to 10 and they tell you you're 11th, I might leave that one alone. But if you're coming in top three or you're a finalist, those people are always worth continuing that relationship with.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about, this just kind of came to mind, but I know a lot of times if you get like a bad fit lead or a bad fit, somebody who just doesn't ultimately close with you, but you've built like a decent relationship with, um, how do you think about like partnerships? Like, oh, this person maybe isn't a good fit for us because of what we focus on. But oh, maybe I could connect you to this other
Mhm.
agency or this other vendor that would be a good fit for you. And, maybe there's somebody who could become a client down the road. Have you had experiences around that?
We have, and so prior to Infinum, when we were just the North American team, as Expand the Room, when we were smaller, we did a lot of that. We had partnerships not only with other agencies that had complementary services to what we did or didn't do, but we also had partnerships with hosting providers and SaaS and middleware providers for very specific things. Some of them were involved in payments, some were in the insurance vertical, that sort of thing. Specifically to your question on the partnership side, yeah, I mean all the time. When we get an opportunity and maybe they're asking for five things and we can do three, we'll try to see if they're open to us co-pitching with one of our partners. And we're very upfront about, hey, we can do the 75, 60% of this project. These two things are not in our wheelhouse, but we do have a trusted partner who we've worked with before that can do that. Are you comfortable with us just leading the project and having them work with us? And that works well. There certainly have been instances in the past where there's been something that's just flat out not right for us. Um, and we do just, we will pass those over to other agencies that we know, whether it's like purely a brand identity logo opportunity. We do some of that work, but you can recognize when maybe someone's looking for not to name drop, but like the pentagram level
Hmm.
branding. That's a whole different thing, and I don't think that's a business that we're going to be in. So we would look for a partner to do that. And we also have a select group of finders and referral partners who are out there fielding opportunities across a wide array of businesses, like not just digital agencies that have us, well positioned and slotted in for those things as they come up. I think the big change now with being part of Infinum our lives went in North America from being part of a 25-person team to now being part of a 400-person team. So particularly from a technology standpoint, and the amount of tech stacks that we can support and the types of products that we can build, B2C, B2B, IoT projects that are connecting to appliances and real world devices. Like there are definitely things that a year or two ago, as a smaller shop, we would have had to find a partner or just flat out passed on. And those are becoming fewer and fewer. We can be a little bit more bold with what we can approach.
No. Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier about kind of the I guess the seasonality that can
Yeah,
exist in biz dev, in agency space, that sort of thing. Um, what are your thoughts? What advice, I guess, would you give to an agency founder who just kind of feels like they're always at the mercy of um, just whatever the current market conditions are? You know.
yeah, yeah. This comes up a lot, and I always say you gotta. I know it's hard, especially if you're a founder or an owner. You got to take a deep breath and realize you can only control what you can control, right? Um, I think about selling from a place of desperation, like clients can smell that a mile away. So if you're putting off the vibe that you're really stressed that things aren't going well, it's going to come through in your conversations and in your proposals, right? So I think you've got to trust that the market and trends kind of do what they're going to do. Now, if you've got financial indicators that are telling you year over year, you're seeing that trend line just go straight down, that's a whole different story. Like pull the alarm bell, start doing some stuff. Let's get this ship, this course corrected. But it's definitely something I've gotten more comfortable with the older I've gotten. I've been doing, this type of work in the digital agency space for 14, 15 years now. Um, I've seen enough. I've been through a recession. I know what that felt like. That was not pleasant.
Hmm.
We were all through the pandemic. We saw what kind of a monkey wrench that threw into everything for the course of 2 years. Um, yeah, I think you learn to relax a little bit and focus. Like, where can you put your energy in a positive direction so that in 2 3 months time, that cumulative action that you're taking, outbound marketing, advertising, speaking on podcasts, going to conferences, meeting people, all of those things start to add up, and it'll pay off.
Yeah, it's a long game, but it's a worthwhile long game.
It's always a long game. Oh,
Yeah.
the phrase that I hate in sales, I've always hated it. There are no quick wins. Like, you
Hmm.
don't just get up and go, oh well, we're light on this technology and I need to backfill that. Let me pick up the bat phone and get a client that's going to fill those 6 seats. Like, if you can do that, you're the best salesperson in the world. But I just, to me, it's you're working on building up to those opportunities in times of need.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, I guess one of the lingering questions I have is, and you kind of hit on this a little bit a minute ago, with kind of just how things shifted during the pandemic. How have you seen kind of this outbound approach and just biz dev in general for agencies evolve post pandemic?
Yeah, it's and I apologize. You'll hear my cuckoo clock, which may or may not cuckoo the right amount of times, which everyone will see in real time. Um, the biggest change that I've seen, I mean, first and foremost, is that people are actually taking it seriously and doing it. Um, back to your similarly to your question with seasonality. Um, so much of the trends that we could kind of see pre 2020, like if I look at 2019, 18, 17, there are some pretty clear indicators of like, oh, well, how's Q1 going to look versus the middle of the summer? And with the exception of kind of the summer slowdown and the every 4 year presidential election, a lot of those trends are kind of just out the window. Um, we're seeing just like so much uncertainty from, inflation. You've got clients that are now much more focused on the limitations of their fiscal budgeting. Um, I think education is one of the only verticals where I've got friends at agencies where they can like set their watch on when budgets are going to open. But otherwise, you're really at the mercy of kind of like when projects get greenlit. And the other thing is, I know a lot of the scuttlebutt in biz dev world is like the length of time it's taking to get deals sold, which
Mm.
is inordinately long right now. But the flip side of it is that I think it's probably taking just as much time for internal, project stakeholders to get approval for their projects. So I'm also like sympathetic to that. Like these folks are fighting for every dollar internally just to get their own projects greenlit. And then when they finally get that to happen, then they've got to run through an RFP process, and then they've got to select a vendor, and then they're slow rolling a contract because they have to get all those approvals on budget. So um, I think the trends have changed, and you've got to be more comfortable with the uncertainty of the ebb and flow of daily activities. I think post
Mhm.
pandemic, though, people have balanced their tactic playbook, if you will, and have realized that the days of just narrowly focusing your agency and spending a bunch of money on marketing and doing SEO focused articles and like you open up your inbox and have 100 leads that are all going to close, like those days are so done. You really have to manufacture your own opportunities, and I firmly believe that having a good outbound practice with all of those other things together is simply a good additive measure to make sure that you can weather those tough times.
Yeah. Kind of think about it holistically. And honestly, a lot of the long-term thinking is um, you're almost preparing for these sort of famine
Yeah,
periods,
yeah,
like not getting too overconfident, not hiring too quickly when things are going really well. It's like if you have the wind at your back, that's your opportunity to be setting aside as much as you can so
yeah.
that when the wind is at your front, you can withstand a lot of the ups and downs. So,
I mean, you're always working to backfill, right? I mean, I think um, it's a horribly inadequate analogy, but it's the only one I've ever gotten. I'll keep using it until I eventually come up with something better. But if you think of it like a table with four chairs, hopefully you have more than four clients. But you think about it, you've got maybe four pillar clients. Like, you lose one, you don't backfill it. Okay, a three-legged table, that'll stand up, be a little wobbly. You start kicking out two legs, your table's going down, right? So to me, you're constantly, if you've got, good pillar clients, looking to replace two of those to account for one leaving like every year or two. Like if you can keep doing that, then that's where you get from the 1 million to the 10 million business, and really grow from there. But being in a position where you're, one of the trends we're seeing now is a lot of business that's closing. And this isn't just this is agencies broadly that I speak with. It's mostly repeat work from existing clients, like coming back with new budget to do incremental things, and word of mouth and referrals. But true net new opportunities that are just landing and then you're pitching and winning, like those are becoming fewer and far between. I don't know that that trend will continue. It just seems to be like that's the season we're in, and
mhm,
you got to dress for the weather.
yep. Maybe it'll be better post election. Maybe we'll have to wait a little
Hope so.
longer. Who knows? Yeah.
Hope so. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
look, when the last two that we've had, usually post November, December, things start to pick up a little bit, and the next year is fine. I think it's just always the uncertainty of it all.
Hmm.
Um, even though we are certain that there will be someone elected, but the market just until they know that okay, this is done, this person's going to be sworn in on this date, let's start spending money. Um, so January.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, it's been great chatting biz dev and really, getting challenged to think long term, um, regardless of
Thank you.
whether it's super comfortable. But yeah, I'd love for you to share with the folks who are listening in and the people who will listen later. What's the best way that they can uh, follow up with you or
Sure.
stay in touch with whatever you're putting out there?
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, LinkedIn, super easy. Just my name. I think it's Adam.Kurzawa, like after the LinkedIn URL, if you need to find me direct. You can find our company at infinum.com. And then personally, email, I can drop it in the show notes, but also it's just Adam.Kurzawa@infinum.com. Always happy to chat biz dev, sales strategy, and also always happy to chat if you've got a project and need a great digital agency.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And yeah, maybe we'll have you on again down the road.
Oh, I would love it. This is great. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Sweet. Have a good one.
You too, David.